I think that we can start now. And yes, thank you for coming. And my name is Valentina Sahno. I am the head of business school, the Kyiv School of Economics. And I wish we wouldn't raise this topic at all. But today is the 14th day of the war, and we have faced challenges that we were not ready for. The way of life has changed, and the way of living business also have changed. And today we are going to cover the topic, the leader at war. And we have great special guests. And I step out and give the floor to our moderator, is Olena Homenko. She is the faculty at Kyiv School of Economics, and she is an executive coach and also has DBA. Olena, please, the floor is yours, and please introduce our guests. Thank you so much.
Valentina, thank you very much. We are very happy to be here today. We wish it was different times, different context, and we would discuss many other very important topics related to leadership. But we're here today to discuss the topic of leader at war. And I'm privileged and honored to have today with me my colleagues, fellow coaches, and also veterans of the United States Army, Christine Hoover and Floyd Carlson, who are here with us. Thank you guys for lending us a hand in preparing it and also for sharing your time with us. And I think this is what we need, this type of conversation we need specifically with people like Christine and Floyd, because they combine the direct experience of leading military actions and during war. Both Christine and Floyd had several deployments in the war zones as leaders in the military. But they also are, since then, they moved through the leadership positions in civilian organizations, commercial organizations. I know Floyd worked for a global company as a leader in sales. And they also work with leaders now. So they had this unique privilege of digesting their own experience and reflecting on what works in situations like war, and also see how this translates in a variety of contexts. So we're here today to talk about that and provide some kind of structures, support, maybe ideas and wisdom, and also help us have this discussion today so you guys and the members who will join us later share your own experience, because you guys are now in the 14th days in the country that's at war, and you have already gained your own experience. So we would like to build this as an interactive discussion as much as we can. And maybe I just want to invite Christine and Floyd to say a couple of words to greet us and also the people who will watch the recording afterwards.
Floyd.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. I wish it was a different circumstance that we're here to talk to you about. This is that period in time where, you know, from our experience, and Christine and I will share what we've gone through. This isn't something of our choosing, but this moment has chosen us. And, you know, we're here to support you, you know, because you're going through this stuff in real time. And I'm honored to be able to be here to be able to support you, along with Christine and Elena.
So I'm Kristen Hoover. I am inspired to be here because all of you are here to make a difference. You want to do better. You have 14 days of experience, and that will be for lifetimes for you to unpack. But I am grateful that you are here because you want to know, what do I do when I don't know what to do? What can I do better? And this is the start, is to create this kind of time to talk to each other and learn from each other and to reflect. So thank you for making time today.
Thank you, Christine. And I just wanted to, we have so far, I see 2 participants and I want, 35 actually participants we have. I somehow see only 2 on my screen. And I want to start with inviting all of us to be, to put in the chat, like, what is it that you guys need today from us? From this conversation, Leader at War, what is at the center of your attention? What is that you need to understand better? What is it where you need more ideas or support or guidance? Victoria will be monitoring our chat. And just to start, if you can, I know not everybody has this functionality on your devices, just type in the chat where you're from and what is that we can give you today. What do you need from us today to feel supported and informed? And while we're doing that, I want to start with what came to mind to me when I heard from Valentina that we might want to create an event like this one about leadership at war. And I immediately thought about the leadership course that is on in the Kyiv School of Economics for one of the state-owned enterprises, and the module that is supposed to happen this coming weekend. And this module is postponed for now, but one of the topics we are discussing in that course is leadership in complexity. And we talk about a Kinevin model that describes 4 contexts of complexity, and one of them is chaotic. And the other one is obvious, and the other 2 is complex and complicated. And before the war started, most of our time in class is dedicated to helping leaders discern the type of the context that they are in and adequately deploy strategies and know what to do in each of the contexts. And before the war, we almost never spoke about chaotic context, which is when the events are developing rapidly. We don't really understand what is happening and what influences what. There is plenty of unknown unknowns. We don't even know what we need to know. And then as information comes, it changes the context for us. And there's tons of decisions to be made, and there's no time and no resources. And little did I know that I will have to bring this context of chaotic environment into a conversation in my leadership course, but we haven't chosen this moment. We are now in a chaotic context, most of you, which calls for a different way to lead. Many of the things that we know and we discuss, and many of you, the leadership experience that you have, are useful and will be mentioned today, I'm sure. But it's a very different shift of the context. It's a different set of responsibilities. The stakes are very high. And there's also demands unheard before, demands on our businesses, demands on our people, and demands on ourselves. So when I heard about this request from Valentina, I immediately thought of Christine and Floyd, and I contacted them with like, this is what we're doing and what do you have to say? And both Christine and Floyd were very generous coming up with ideas, which we will share and unpack today. But we would like to frame this conversation around 5 strategies for leaders at war that are extremely important to have in mind and be able to see if you can use them. And those strategies are having very clear intent and mission for every leader for every day, to really understand what is it that you want to achieve or you need to achieve, and what exactly do you need to do that. And this sounds simple, but it isn't. And I'm sure for the 14 days of your experience, you had already seen the challenge of understanding that. The second one is that extraordinary times call for extraordinary rules of engagement. We have to review and reestablish the rules of engagement within our teams. How do we communicate? What do we communicate? And what is needed? We also need to continue working on maintaining morale. And it's day 14. It's not a blitzkrieg as they wanted. That's wonderful. We are standing and we will stand. And it's a marathon. It's very clear now, like, how do we maintain the morale, and what do we need to do for the morale to stay high? How do we serve our people, give them what they need to maintain morale? Strategy number 4 may be unexpected, but very important. It's caring for self. And caring for self and others, we run on energy, and it's finite resource unless we find the ways to replenish it. So we'll talk about that. And the extreme preparedness. In the context of chaotic environment, it's very hard to plan, but it's so important to plan it. And I know Floyd has something to tell us about the decision templating and planning at war. So this is what we are prepared to talk to you about. And we want to structure a discussion around those 5 topics. But Victoria, I would like to check what else do we see in the chat in terms of what people...
Yes, thank you so much, Olena. We already have 4 questions for now. Maybe we should start with the first 2. So the first and the second questions are, which most important goals should be leader at war be pursuing? And the second one, how to talk to people who worry about their tomorrow.
Thank you, Victoria. So what are the most important goals for the leader at the times of war, and how to talk to the people?
Yeah, who are worried.
Okay, let's take these 2.
Floyd, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. So let's go with the first one, that's listed here, is those most important goals for a leader. I was sharing this because we were preparing, before this session, and as a commander in an infantry company, there was a reason I carried a pistol versus a rifle, because as a leader, I would need to keep my focus on all the different things that are actually happening in the space. If I'm carrying a rifle, and at that moment, if we're being engaged, my focus is on, 30 degrees to my left and right, 500 meters in front of me. At that point, I've taken myself out of leading because I'm focused on a small detail that honestly, there's others in our organization can help achieve that. And I'm focused on what are all those things that the leader that I need to be focused on. So in combat, that's indirect fire, that's who's to my left, who's to my right, how do I deploy my reserves? So the same things as a leader, and Christine and I will talk to you about, putting in some structure such as these stand-up meetings, twice a day where we're communicating what is the priority for today and who's going to do that. So another thing, we'd just like to bring into this to get this kicked off is continuing to focus on what can we control and what can we influence. From some of our coaching programs and trainings that, we've been involved with, we call this Locus of Control. There's those things that I can control, and those things I want to be focused on as a leader. Those other things that are out there, yeah, I get it. Those are things, and we're going to talk to you about how to template for those. But honestly, let's focus on what's here actually in the moment that our people need and we need to continue to run our organizations. Christine, love to have you add into this, please.
Yeah, thank you for kicking us off, Floyd. I think in addition to understanding what your span of control, what your locus of control, what it is that you and you alone can do, because if you're getting too much into the weeds, somebody needs to be here. I think being able to recognize that could change from the more time you wake up and then at lunchtime or something else happens. And so being ready to make that judgment call on, do I need to shift my priorities? Today I was, worried about just maintaining, keeping my storefront open. And now I have somebody there's a safety issue. And I now need to, start to make the call on, when is it time to go? When is it time to stay? So it's making that context shift of what phase am I in this war? What is needed from my organization? What can I influence? And being able to make that judgment call on, hey, this is no longer the priority. And then being able to figure out how to communicate that outward on what that priority is. Nobody will tell you what that priority is. That is going to be on you to figure out what is needed for your team, your organization. I know that there's probably some confusion on what's happening with the military. But again, the saying is, you go before you know. So you're going to have to make that judgment call. And so that's very different than when we aren't getting attacked and we have plenty of time to plan. So I think being comfortable in like, okay, I'm going to make this judgment call and we're going to change gears. We're going to shift our priority. We're going to change what our focus is. And again, Floyd had alluded to this earlier. There might be time, even in this last 14 days, to figure out, what did I do that didn't go so well? What can I do differently? How can I communicate in a different way? How, you know, what maybe this wasn't the right priority and having to make another a decision to shift. So that's, again, we'll talk about that when we talk about the systems and structures to get you through your days. But yeah, I think as far as like your goal as a leader, just making sure that you're the one that's making that judgment call on what is the most important thing. Is it safety? Is it evacuation? Is it sustaining operations? Is it morale? So I hope that answered the question, Andre. And the second question is how to talk to people who worry about their tomorrow. Floyd, did you have anything burning that you want to share right off the bat?
I just wanted to still tap into one thing, you know, from all my experience is when things are getting really chaotic, what really happens then is nobody's talking. Communication goes down to nothing. And so if there's one thing that I'm going to be really focused on as a leader is constant communication. What do we know? What are we doing? What's our focus? This really leans into the first strategy about, you know, clear leader intent and really being really focused on, you know, the mission that we have today. Continue to communicate, because without communication, people start making all these stories up. You know, so that's one thing, you know, military, civilian, I worked in a role of critical accounts when the stuff was hitting the fan, and apologies for my slang. Hey, guess what? Communication dropped. People started making up stories. So let's communicate and communicate.
I want to add to that, Floyd. This is a pet peeve of mine. When I was deployed for Iraq for 1 year, and one of the generals I worked for called it the rule of 7. You could have a good idea as a leader and you say it once and your people only heard this much. So you're going to have to say it to your team, talk about it in the bathroom, send an email, and, you know, so on, and repeat yourself. And maybe by the 7th time, people are like, oh, that's what you're talking about. So I know that in times of war, you don't have that kind of time, but just understand, like, are you clear? Say it back to me. Did you hear what I said? And just understand that can be like, it's the telephone game when, you know, people are going to hear what they want to hear. So be clear, say it again. So it's that, you know, people are really getting the message. So I just want to offer that.
And I'll add one more thing here, maybe helpfully from what I know from like working with leaders and discussing leadership in chaotic situations, is that it doesn't make sense. Like, how many times, guys, in the 14 days we were repeating, like, what is happening? This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And I think one of the roles I took as a leader for my small team and my family, and my husband is still in Kiev and we are talking every day, is like, we create senses. This is our role. We make sure that as a team, as an organization, as a family unit, we make sense together. Like, we see the situation the same way, and communication is important for that. And we need to take a lead, even if we have no idea. Like, we totally don't. And it doesn't allow for some rational analysis. It's my call as a leader to tell to my people, this is what is happening. This is what I tend to achieve. And this is what we're going to be doing. Right. So that's that.
That's great.
So leading into I was going to go to the second question, if that's okay.
Victoria. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, here are some questions also, maybe a little bit addition. Well, one of the questions is about motivation. If I may maybe a bit add from myself, as I see a leader is a person who in a quiet times says to the team, let's go team, we can do it. So it's a person who motivates, who leads. But I think in the time of war, of stress, even the role model of such person is now more to survive, to make to make people, your team, to survive. So when these priorities goes to survive, what can these leaders do to still motivate people, to inspire them, to put sparks in their soul? So what should the leader do to be taken as a leader from quiet times with the such set of instruments?
Yeah, thank you. Christine, do you want to start off?
I'm actually still noodling on this one, Floyd. I have a couple of different ways. You want to start us off and then I can blend in?
Yeah. And Victoria, thank you. And I actually think this relates to how do we talk to people who worry about tomorrow. You know, what I have found as, you know, my time in combat operations, you know, for myself and for those leaders that I saw around me, one of the things which is key is that we're visible. People want to know that we're there and we care. And so the conversation could be as simple as, how are you doing right now in this moment? And really taking that pause to hear what they have to say. And we don't have to solve anything. It's just listening to them. There's this other piece of, you know, getting them to think about, you know, what are they doing this for? Because one of the things which I really admire about each and every one of you is you're doing this for not only your family, your country, your company, yourself. Those things are incredibly powerful motivators to get people talking about what's most important in their life. And also talking about, you know, the stories they're going to be able to tell their grandchildren in the future about what they've been able to achieve here in this moment. So really, if you're hearing what I'm saying, it's basic conversations. It's the same conversations we're having today. They're conversations that are more focused on, you know, what's happening for you? Gosh, what's important to you? How's your family doing? Where are they at? When was the last time you heard from them? What are you going to do when this thing's over? What are the stories you're going to be telling about this thing? That's where I'd start from. Christine.
Yeah, thank you for that, Floyd. I think speaking specifically when we're dealing with other people that are living in fear, that fear is going to be grounded in, am I going to die? Is my family going to be safe? What's happening to my country? It's a lot of the fear of the unknown. And if you look at those fears, what's fascinating about that is we can't control so much of that. And so there's also our own ability, what happens when I like to control, and usually I can. So how do I deal with that? How do I motivate that? To kind of to what Floyd was saying is, well, what can you control? I can't control how I die, but I can control how I live. I can't control maybe I feel like I can't control my own fear for my family, but what does my family need? What role do I play in this? Or as a leader, like what's needed? Do they need somebody to listen to them? Do they need a motive, like an inspirational talk to say, hey, Elena, share the classic poet in the 19th century. It could be something like a mantra of, we do this for the country. You fight for go ahead, Elena.
Yeah, I just mentioned to Christine and Floyd that today is Taras Shevchenko's birthday and how important he is for the national consciousness of us. And I was quoting something which I will read now. I have it with me, which it says, борітеся, поборете, вам Бог помагає, за вас правда, за вас слава і воля святая. That's what I told both Floyd and Christine, and I think this is something that speaks to very many people and also creates faith. We are on our soil. This is our country. This is our homes, our streets, our cities, and this is our businesses. This is our people. This is why we are fighting. As many times we repeat it, it's so important that we kind of center on that. Remember, I said the job of a leader is make sense for people, like create senses. So yeah, that was the quote that I shared this morning with both Christine and Floyd.
And I think, Elena, it can be things like that, that it starts from you. What is the fear that you have in your own? Have you made your own peace with how you want to live and how you're going to die? I will just share, in my first deployment, I was in Bosnia after the genocide, and I thought I was there was a moment I thought I was going to die. And when I don't normally pray, so I don't know if I was talking to God, but I realized, like, okay, I might die. And then a remarkable thing came over where it was just this peace where I couldn't control that. And so I felt like, wow, once I could kind of make peace that I might die, I could think more clearly on what I could do and how I wanted to live and how I wanted to lead. So whatever that may or may not look like for you, for the spiritual aspect, how you come to grips with what if other people are making, talking about fears that you don't know yourself, I encourage all of us as leaders to figure out, what are you feeling fear in your own life, and try to find a way to, if you look at Floyd, and there's a calm in leadership. Even if the duck underneath the water is going like this, the leadership is that smooth glide is very important to allow other people to have confidence, to have faith and confidence that, hey, there could be a lot going on, but we don't have to be crazy. We can still operate with good order and discipline. So try to reconcile those things within yourself and share those stories with your people. Hey, I'm struggling with this fear too, and this is what I'm going to do. That in and of itself is motivating. That is showing your way and inspiring what else is possible. Floyd, did you have something?
Yeah, Christina, that sparked a thought. When I was fighting in Iraq, inside my helmet, I had a picture of an ultrasound. Didn't know the sex yet of our unborn child. Every day I'd look at that ultrasound, and I knew that my purpose was to get back to see my child born. So it's finding, what is your purpose in this moment? What is it that gives you the motivation?
So, yes.
Yeah, every time I hear the story, Floyd, it's just, what is it that we are doing here? And I've shared a piece of my personal experience for the last 14 days. I had 7 million times the question, why didn't he leave my husband? And my daughter as well hears the same questions. And the answer we both give is like, why should he? Why should he? And that's what he said. This is my home. Why should I? And this might work for some of you, this might not, but I'm thinking like starting there, as Christine suggested. And then speaking of the locus of control, what is one thing I can do? And then our job as leaders is to give this to people, provide direction and this mission for the day. I heard from somebody, from my clients, is we have our car fleet spread out across the country, and we need to make sure that we have it all together so we can redeploy it to evacuate people, to deliver food, or to volunteer, to whatever. So this is our mission for today, is to get as many cars as possible and find a way to get them in. And this is one thing that we need to do. And this is already a lot that we are doing for our people, because this is what we can do, right? Or we can cover for our friends and colleagues who go and volunteer. This is how we do this. 30% of our staff, or I don't know what's the number, is with the territorial defense or volunteering. And we accept that. And as a company, this is what we do to have the job done and have these people out there doing what's important. So it kind of brings us to the point of the rules of engagement, Victoria, which we also wanted to mention here, unless there's something else you've seen in the chat that we need to address before that.
Yes, there are 2 more questions, but if you don't mind, we can discuss them a little bit later.
Okay. Maybe we will answer them as we speak.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Yes.
So there was this rule, alternative rules of engagement, and the fact that, the ways we communicate and the ways we take decisions and the ways we run our business and the ways we empower people need to be adapted and changed. And both Floyd and Christine named it very highly in their list of like the wisdom that comes from the experience. So I just wanted to give space to that, like the agreed clear rules of engagement when the workforce is spread out, scattered, is in different contexts. Somebody is already on the occupied territory, God forbid. Somebody is evacuating, somebody is going, like holding the back office because they're in the West. So how do we communicate, and the need to do that is very important. And I know many of you have already spent some time doing that. Christine, Floyd, what do you have on that, on the rules of engagement?
Floyd, do you want to talk about this? Should we talk about maybe the stand up and then the feedback loop and creating that rhythm, the daily rhythm, or do we want to go at a level higher, you think?
Oh, we start there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, a really nice standard way to when we are now dealing in a different operation and a different mission and changing day by day the security conditions or what's happening with your people, it's really important to figure out where you are and to start from that point. And so what we would typically stand up is maybe one or two meetings at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. So in the military, we run 24-hour operations. So sometimes it's 6 in the morning and then 6 at night, or maybe, you know, depending on the hour, maybe it's 9 and maybe it's at 3. But basically at that beginning of the day, it's a quick 5 to 10 minute briefing. So you see who is on your team and they're able to tell you, you know, what's happening, what they need. And it's purposely to say what's needed for today. What, you know, and then what happened yesterday or whatever is informing, but where are we? And then you regroup. Okay, I don't have, you know, and you make a call on what your priority is going to be and what you're going to be doing, or you make a call on like what you still need to gather, what questions you still have. That's going to set the cadence for that day. So it brings a semblance of order for the team and they can figure out how, you know, how, again, and from Floyd's point, you don't need to get into the weeds. They tell them what to do and let them surprise you with however they get it done. Don't worry about the details. And at the end of the day, the other part of that is to say, hey, this is what I'm reporting out. This is what went well. This didn't go so well. And it's called an after action report, but this is what we can do. And more importantly, I didn't care who was making a mistake, but it's about what are we going to do about it? So it's that focus on learning. So people are going to bring you the problems because you want to make sure that they are safe to tell you, that was a bad idea, sir. That was a bad idea, ma'am. But this is what we're going to do to be better. And then that will also inform the next day of operations. So that's a stand-up. That's a good structure or whatever it is that can work. But it's meant to be like, and people will figure out like how much information they need to bring. But the two things is my leadership would say is come to these meetings to be informed, to listen, and also to be ready to inform. So you're also able to receive information and that constant give and take of learning from each other. Floyd, did you have anything else you wanted to add on either the stand-up or other rules of engagement?
You know, to even help it make it easier, what we do at the lowest level is we'd always do what we call buddy pairs. You know, so who's my other person that I'm going to be responsible for? This helps with communicating up through the chain. So when we get to these, you know, the chain that you create, your leadership structure. So when you have these stand-ups, it's easier to understand. If I know that, you know, we call them battle buddies, is Victoria. Victoria knows I'm her battle buddy. The two of us are constantly taking care of each other, looking out where we're at, but we're also then communicating up to our next level. Hey, we're okay. You know, here's where we're at. We've accomplished our task. Whatever those things are that we were needed to focus on, we've achieved those today. That helps that communication flow. It also helps us as leaders to understand, hey, is there something, you know, happening with one of our people that we don't know about? Because that would be my responsibility and Victoria's responsibility. You know, if there's something going on between, you know, one of us that's impacting us, we're communicating that to get the support down to the lowest level to actually help. So that just helps foster the communication flow.
Oh, you're on mute, Elena.
So I just wanted to mention that one more thing that Floyd, you sent me on the day when I asked for your help was the ACE report, the format, like how you will create a very simple, basic templates for communication. Do you want to talk about that as well?
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. So we would call this report in U.S. Army ACE report. So it'd be ammunition, casualties, and equipment. It would be a quick status report. So if me and our 5 people who are here on the video with us, if we're a fire team or if we're a group doing work together, we would send up one, before that stand-up meeting or before the evening stand-up meeting, a report. Hey, here's where we're at, based on ammunition, casualties, and equipment, a quick status report. That helps to facilitate, again, that communication flow. There's a theme that's already forming here in this discussion about the importance of communication. And it's not just, the communication within our hierarchy, it's also the communication left and right of us. You have other organizations that are here that are on this call with us. What are they doing? Who's to my left? Who's to my right? Who's to the front of me? Who's behind me? Coordinating those actions together. We're way better when we coordinated and we're able to share resources across all of us rather than just think I have to do this alone as a leader.
I'm actually, as you're talking, I'm thinking about what I'm observing from the Ukrainian leadership, or what's going on now is that we have very clearly like sectors of responsibility divided, and each of the people responsible, we know who is going to be talking about what's happening with the sanctions and international support. That's Minister of Foreign Affairs. We know who somebody will talking about the supplies of ammunition. That's the Minister of Defense. The general staff will give communiques about state of the affairs in the morning and in the evening, and that's what we wait for. We know that the Ministry of Health is still doing a lot for hospitals and the people having a need to access medical help. So this is wonderful. And so each of those branches, I'm observing that, and they have their own frequency, and we know that they also communicate with each other, and as Floyd said, above, behind, and on the sides, and that's so important. And I see people doing this now already in their teams, like HR is talking about what is happening to our people, finance is making sure that we're paying salaries and paying to our vendors. I don't know, like sales are talking about the inventories and what is happening if we need to secure our inventories, what's happening. Logistics are talking about what's happening with the warehousing. And is that what you need to tell? You can create your own template for those 3 points that we all need to know about, and that could be helpful as well.
Yeah, I love where this from the neuroscience aspect, and Christine, you hit on this. The brain loves certainty, and in times like this, there's not a lot of certainty. But these structures that we're talking about add certainty of, okay, hey, I know I'm responsible for my battle buddy. I know I'm responsible to communicate up and to receive communication coming down. That framework, those continuous things we do each day, because this is definitely a marathon, this isn't a sprint. Those start to create that certainty, that structure that's going to support us as leaders and our people.
And also on the rules of engagement, I'm not sure which industry you guys are in, the participants today, and which part of the country you are in. And I know that communicating with the military is becoming more or less important depending on where you are, like be it the territorial defense, be it the military administration of your town, be it the people who are literally defending the power plant, like it happened in Zaporizhia and the Enerhodar. So and that's also something that leaders has to check if that's in place and if it's sufficient and adequate. The communication and coordination with our armed forces, with the police, with the territorial defense, and are people informed And are people given the template on what needs to be reported to whom and how often? And I know it's becoming more important as farther east or south we go, but it's also important in Kiev. I heard already that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we would call these roles liaison. We would have a liaison, and this is something that we as leaders can delegate and have somebody responsible for. You know, your role is to be the liaison with the military presence that we have around us, and making sure we're coordinating with them. You will be the liaison with the local magistrate or government. You'll be the liaison with the local police. Again, that's information that's coming to the stand-up meetings to help us be totally informed about what's going on, not just within our organization, but around us.
Anything else on rules of engagement and communication?
Keep it simple. And also just know that every now and then you might have to increase the frequency. There might be a time that you have to meet 3 times a day. And so make that judgment call on what's needed. And then also know when to back off, when to say, hey, we're not in surge mode anymore. We'll take it easy. We'll just go to this, so just make that call and just continue to pay attention. Don't get so stuck like, yay, I have certainty and comfort. If it needs to change, be willing to change that too on your terms. So.
And also the surge and the kind of release time is important. The rhythm, I would call it, the rhythm of what's going on. And it's also something I see leaders really managing consciously. And this is directly linked to our third strategy, which is morale, maintaining morale for the employees and for the people around us. And I posted yesterday on Facebook a short post about Stockdale Paradox, which I think is an important thing to remember. And Admiral Stockdale was held as a prisoner of war for 7.5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And he was the one who organized the resistance and led the resistance in the camp. And he was looked up by many, many people. And then later he was teaching philosophy at Stanford, namely precisely focusing on Stoics and the philosophy of ancient Stoics. And his paradox is like, we shouldn't confuse the faith and that we prevail one day. And this is absolutely, we cannot afford to lose that. And then also with full awareness of brutal facts of reality that is happening. And we shouldn't confuse one with the other. We should keep both. And this is called a paradox. And those of you who are my students know that we talk a lot about the role of the leader is to hold paradox, because this is what is happening in the world. The world is paradoxical. We have to make sense for people. So Stockdale is advising us, let's keep being optimistic, but let's also know really as clearly as possible what is happening. And I think part of the maintaining morale is to be able to serve both to your troops or to your employees. And I'm interested in what you have to share, Floyd and Christine, on that.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're being clear on what morale is, because morale it can be confused for it feels good. And that is a component of morale. To me, morale is about the spirit of what's happening, the energy of your team, of how the vitality of them. Is their energy sort of oh boy, I'm tired, or I'm this, or whatever it is that's going on? That's all okay. But what's needed, in those moments? And the optimal morale is when there's that nice balance and everybody's feeling energized. Maybe there's still a lot of uncertainty, but they can keep going. Maybe there's some setbacks, they keep going. Maybe they're all of those things. It doesn't take such a ding on the team, because the morale, the faith and the confidence in leadership, the faith and confidence in what we're doing in our why is strong, is almost, it's unflappable. Nothing can really touch it. So I think, to me, that was one of the points, especially in the 1 year type of deployments, is to maintain that morale. So whatever happens, we can weather the storms, if you will. So that's, I just want to level set. Floyd, I don't know if you want to talk any more about morale, if we want to talk about how to maintain the morale, but yeah, is there anything meaningful or that's coming up for you?
I think you nailed it. You know, there's definitely going to be these peaks and valleys, and it's not, you know, how do I keep us always at the highest level? It's again, acknowledging what's there. You know, this is normal, and this is going to take sustainment. This isn't something that's going to be over tomorrow. This is going to be a long-term thing. How do we keep this going, this balance?
Yeah, yeah. I have a thing about, I was raised, well, that's my history here. Hold on. Very tough. Like it was like, you know, there's no crying. That's weakness. And so I've really struggled when I am feeling fear, or I'm feeling I'm the leader and I don't know what to do. And I think that's from the leadership side, your own morale is also very important. You cannot hide, or you can, but it'll catch up with you. So I think it's really important, Valentina, I think you had mentioned it, like, how do I lead when I feel uncertain? How do I lead when I lose my way? When my own morale, right, is starting to wane, when it's starting to dip. And I think the reality is that there are times for us to do that reflection, maybe with our family. Floyd's talked about a battle buddy. I don't know if that makes sense, but the battle buddies I've had are the ones that I can tell them anything about my fears, about my family, things that might not be appropriate. And then to everybody else, it's like, haha, we've got this. But because there's a time and place to show that vulnerability. And a lot of times your people, they do need to see your confidence. They need to feel your calm and your certainty. But that doesn't mean that you are always going to feel that. And I think it's really important for you I think it takes huge courage to think or announce, I don't know what to do, but we will figure this out. Or I will talk to who I need to do to resource myself. Yeah, Floyd, I don't know. Before we go any further, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add on that part. On morale or self.
I love that. And I find morale is tied so tightly and closely to the next one around care for self. Because it's really, you know, as a leader, the one thing I can actually really control is my own energy and how I show up. And in that particular moment at that time, what is the energy that I need for my people and how I need to show up? Do I need to show up as curious? Do I need to show up as inflappable, that I got this? Do I need to show up with vulnerability? You'll know, you'll be able to read what's happening with your people in that moment, but that's the one thing we can control. And to be able to do that, this is where the care for self is so important that I think we're going to go to next and start talking about.
I do want to make another point on morale, and Valentina, you had mentioned it. It is amazing how, was it a cappuccino you had today? That again, in Iraq, I think especially, I know this has to be happening in the Ukrainian people, how creative and resourceful and maybe almost sometimes funny or silly, that can pick up the morale when you can find a way to feel, even if it's heavy, to be light and make fun of things. That helps to boost the morale. That allows you to see, like, I still have a lot more gas in my tank. I might be feeling heavy, but I don't know. It's just amazing how the silly, the red pants, Elena, on the meme, how that can just pick your spirits up. So as leaders, and you'll find it in your people, you'll find it in children. The children will continue to be a stand for playing football or soccer or finding the way, like, oh yeah, those are the morale builders. They're very easy and simple, but it is. I was in the Air Force, not in the Army, but when we would deploy and you don't have a shower for a long time and you don't have, in your sleep, it is amazing when you do get a hot shower, after so many days of either not bathing or a cold shower. It's the little things that you can celebrate for your people, and then also for yourself, that can really lift your spirits. So be looking for those ways to bring that to your people, or to be finding other ways for other, you're going to have the silly people on your team. And those are all, it's inappropriate, some of the things that we talk about sometimes, I think, and that's what makes it so, that's what boosts the morale. So I'll just leave it at that. Floyd, are you?
Well, we had the classic, that we'd always focus on is what we call the 3 M's of morale. First of all, it's mail. So communication with their family. When people are getting notifications, mail when you're deployed, wow, that raises the morale. Money, they know they're being paid. They don't have to worry about those aspects, because the money's still flowing. They're able to take care and support their family. Because if they're worried about, the small things like that, they're not focused on what they need to be doing in the moment. And meals, making sure that they're being fed well, just like that nice cup of cappuccino or whatever. When we had those 3 things in place, you could feel the morale be lifted.
Yeah.
I love this. I love how simple and important and foundational this model of 3 M's is, and I think this is so accessible for all of us wherever we are. Valentina, I don't know, it might be a good way to announce that in terms of what Christine was saying, like, I need someone so I can open up. It's an internal psychological moral hygiene for the leaders to be able to find a place where this is how I feel. I am confused. I don't know where to take energy. I need some. We run coaching support program for the alumni and students and educators and professors of the Kyiv School of Economics. So please find yourself a time with this program, outside this program, like find a place where you can be yourself and you can do this internal search and venting and take an emotional shower and step out of that conversation ready to give what your people need. And this does bring us nicely to the self-care strategy. And before we go there, Victoria, I want to check with you if there is anything in the chat.
Yes, there is a question about morale. I think it would be good for this matter. I shall read it. I consider myself as an individualist, and now is the time for most of the collective action. How to find myself in such period in correct application?
So the question, I hope the way I'm understanding it is that maybe they tend to do very well or focus introvert or individual, and then now we're always in a group, and it's exhausting sometimes if you need. So maybe being able to carve out that space to be here while also knowing that other people need you. Victoria, do you think that's the nature of the question?
I think this also is one of the sides, and maybe the other one is that, for example, if you are a person who likes to do everything by yourself, and now you have to be included in some groups, and you are not the person who likes to work maybe in group, you're very good at working all alone, and now you have to be, and maybe you can find some, I don't know, maybe moral or society pressure for why don't you join some groups, and why don't you do anything like that in these tough times? Maybe also this, from this point of view.
Yeah. Floyd, are you getting any initial hits on this one?
I like actually where you're going with this, Christine, is, that there's times where, I may believe that, I do my best work by myself, and there is a lot of pressure around me right now to be in groups. So how do I maintain my individuality inside the team or inside the work that I'm doing? And Christine, I'd love to hear your insights, or Elena also, is, part of this is, to me, the self-care aspect is, what do I need to do to maintain my energy? Do I need some, to burst off some steam? So can I go for, some type of short exercise? Is there, some reflection time? Is it taking time to read something? I don't know if I'm gonna be able to hit this answer exactly, but Christine, maybe this sparks something, or you, Elena.
Yeah, and I think understanding myself is important. And in the question, that person sounds like they understand what is their best, so to speak. I can give you an example around me. Like I'm an educator and I'm a coach, and I so happened that I was outside of the country when the war started and I couldn't come back. So I was like crawling up the walls, like why I'm not there and why am I not in the, you know, volunteering in the hospitals or whatnot. And then I found myself like ways that I can be helpful while like being not able to join groups physically. So in my case, as a coach, I started, mobilizing coaches because there's a lot of support that's needed, and I am supporting the coaches that work now as coaches. I continue work with my clients who are online. I also found myself refuges like, oh, I speak English, I can translate, and I joined the group of the Українська жіноча варта, and I was just doing the translation for them, whatever was coming and offered that needs to be translated. And I know for example, I'm not a fundraiser. I will not be able to raise funds. There are other people who are doing this. And like, it's important for us to like fight off that guilt and shame. Oh, I should be in the army. Oh, I should be in the territorial defense. Oh, I should be, I don't know, like everybody has a place to contribute. We need so much. So some people go donate blood, some people go dig the trenches, some people translate, some people go to the hospitals, and some people, I don't know, collect information and spread it out, create groups online, write apps, hack the enemy software and servers, I don't know, what we can do. And I think that's, to me, is connected also to the leader intent, and that my understanding of like, what is it that I'm fighting for? What is it that is important for me? And then what is my mission? Like, what exactly can I do? Like, what is my part as a coach, as someone who speaks good English, as someone who is connected to lots of groups outside of the country? What can I do? And there's a lot. And I think there's a lot to do for all of us, wherever we are. And obviously being connected to some people is also important. Coming back to self-care, even the individualists, we still need someone to hold us. And someone needs to hold us to hold them. So let's remember that. So that's kind of my take on the individual versus collective.
That's great, Elena. I think the thing I want to really underline from both of you, what you both shared, is you have to be honest with yourself. And even if there's a little bit of peer pressure to say, hey, you need to give here, and you need, find your own way to contribute. I think it's a spectrum of, and what, yeah, I think that you can be that people, yeah, I think that you need to honor yourself, because when we start to give too much, you burn out. And if you're giving for the wrong reason, because somebody else, that's not sustainable and it's not authentic, and that's taking you away from the gifts that you can do. So on one hand, yes, I think there are times to isolate and to make sure that you're, hey, I, like Floyd, like you said, I work best on my own right here, but keep looking up. And if you know, like, okay, I have a little bit more I can give in the group, or I have, and then maybe you'll find a different cause that allows you to honor not collapsing your boundaries. Then you can dance between the both of honoring the self and then the collective. So that's, yeah, I think that's about all I have on that question.
There was something you said there, Christine, right, that stood out to me, is even being able to communicate where I am at my best to others around, so that they know, hey, if that situation comes up, wow, I know that Christine and Floyd can do that. Excellent. Great. I know now how I can best use them.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all having to make
communication. Sorry, Christine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Communication.
Yeah.
Valentina, just checking with you. We have another 30 minutes to go, right? As far as I understand.
Yes, we have this time.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point to return to the topic, so needed and so underestimated and underrated topic of self-care. And I heard so many times this phrase today: I will rest when it's over. I will take care of myself when we evacuate all the people, when my family is finally in safety, when whatever, right? And this when is a very big, dangerous concept to chase. And I would like to ask you, Christine and Floyd, what would you say to someone who is saying, I will take care of myself when the war is over? What would you say?
Floyd, do you want to go?
You can go first.
Yeah. So I was one of those people that used to say that because I felt guilty. I felt if I'm not giving all of myself to the war, to my people, to on and on, that I was being selfish. So I understand the sentiment of my first boss told me, you can rest when you die. We can rest when this is over. And that is a way that you can operate. And I will tell you, it will be, I have another challenge for you. When I deployed for that 1 year to Iraq, I knew that it was a marathon. And I knew I couldn't just run and burn out and run and burn out. So my leadership was based on my ability to maintain my pace. So I'm mentally clear and making good decisions. I'm able to be there for my people, and I can see I have enough energy and to be able to keep that gas in my tank. And my boss made it a little bit easier because he said, there are 5 things that you need to do for yourself this year. And I remember, and he's a 4-star general, and he said, you need every day, you need to sleep. And you need to sleep as much as you can. Don't feel guilty, because when you aren't rested, you will start to, you will not perform as well. You need to be outside or work out or in some way exercise your body to move the blood and the oxygen. Push-ups, jump, whatever you can, running, anything you can to exercise. You need to make sure you're eating well. You need to make sure that as much as whatever is available that you're eating and you're drinking water. Read. We read all day long, but make sure you're reading something for fun. Let your brain escape from the seriousness of what's going on. And lastly, you need to connect. You need to connect with others. You need to connect with your spiritual, if you're religious, but some way that takes you outside of yourself and with some other person. And my reaction to him was like, we don't have time for those 5 things. And I realized that I had to make time. And it doesn't have to be long workouts. It doesn't have to be long anything, but watching those 5 things kept my spirit and my brain and my body going for that year, where I was able to hit it strong every day, the whole time. And I know it's because I took better care of myself. And it isn't weakness. It is working smarter, not harder. It isn't weakness. It is courage to know what you need to sustain yourself for your country, for your people, and for yourself. So that's my offering on the self-care, or whatever, maybe call it something else that doesn't sound so soft. Warrior care to keep your warrior spirit alive. Floyd?
I just posted on the chat these 5 things that Christine was talking about, just so you kind of start thinking for yourself, what are those 5 things for you?
Thank you.
Well said, Christine. From a military planning perspective, and also in non-wartime planning, what we would call operation tempo. We call it op tempo. Systems, people, equipment cannot sustain continuous 100% going at peak continually before there's breakdown. So we purposely plan cycles where you're going to have your cycle, you're at your highest readiness. You have your cycle, you're preparing to be at your highest readiness. You'd have your down cycle. And so as leaders, us planning this and making sure our people are taking care of themselves is actually a critical leadership skill. Yeah, you can try to go as long as you can. And I was on some operations in the Rangers where 78 hours, I think, was the longest I was able to go before I just passed out. I was so tired. I woke up and I was laying literally on the ground, and I didn't know how I got there. Was I the best I could be at that moment prior to that? No, because I was too tired to operate. So thinking that we can just, fight through this. Yeah, I can stay it forever. I'll just keep taking caffeine or energy drinks, whatever, to keep it going. Short term, hey, yeah, it's effective in the short term, very short term. But long term, like this campaign is going to be really building in those aspects that Christina just said. I need to make time for myself, my people. I need to be looking out for them to make sure they're making the same 5 things that they're implementing is so critical. Without the sleep, we're going to be foggy. Without drinking water, our thinking is going to be foggy. All this stuff is essential to be at our best. You're on mute, Elena, but I knew you were ready to talk.
I'm reposting because people saying that, where is it in the chat? I posted to host and panelists, and now I'm posting to everyone. So they are in the chat already in Ukrainian. So you can use them. Good. For self-care, I just wanted to add that we will not have time for a detailed discussion of neuroscience here and the role of neurotransmitters in the functioning of the executive function of the brain. But I just want to say that literally, in most contexts, it's true, and it's certainly very true in chaotic context. What I know from science is that there are 2 things we can control as leaders, only 2, is our level of energy and our attention. Right? The other things are dedicated to other kind of factors of the context, and they will be impacted. So for us to be able to control our level of energy and the level of attention, taking care of the hormonal and metabolic balance with the within my body is important. And so if you want to look at this way, is that you just have to make sure that the apparatus that you're using for your work is in a good shape. And for me, I think attention is also very important. And this comes back to leaders' intent and also the routinal communication, is that certain things has to be in the center of my attention, because this is important. And in a chaotic context, there will be a lot of competing elements coming in. And as a leader, I cannot afford that. And where my attention is going, then my energy is focused there. And then I can be very clear with my troops, and I will be very clear with the people who are around me. So attention is something that can be saved or helped with very important, very basic thing as media hygiene, right? How we are, like I am on 7 million Telegram channels at the start of the war, and like 3 sites, and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter with the people I know. Today, what I have 3 channels of Telegram, and this is all I watch. One of them is the official state channel. The other one is a reputed media, and the other one is the analyst I follow for a while, and I trust his judgment. That's it. And for the rest, I have my husband, I have my friends, I have my team of coaches across the country, and and I save my attention like that. And I have information sessions for myself in the morning, at lunchtime, and at the end of the day. I check those. I'm good. The rest of my attention is intact, and it is going to where it needs to go, and just to scan the environment and to understand. So again, basic, simple. We heard it 7 million times, all of us, and it's important. So energy with self-care and attention with media hygiene.
I want to just tie back to the self-care on the why. Like it seems, I want to make sure I'm not separating, like it's so easy to do these 5 things. But what's important about it is that your country and you and your teams are experiencing something unlike anything before. You're under stress. You are under attack. And I remember in Iraq or in Bosnia, the different conflicts I've been engaged in, everybody hits their breaking points at different times. And sometimes you take it and you're okay, and another attack comes in, and maybe people you know are dying, people are making sacrifices, and you're like, okay, and you're holding it together. And then you see one thing. Maybe it's something with a child, or maybe it's something with a company, and it's they call it the straw that broke the camel's back. But all of us are going to hit that breaking point at some point. It's too much. That is what the definition of trauma is it's too many things happening before your body can complete that cycle. And it's just and so to me, the self-care allows you to weather those storms and to stay steady. So you can have more capacity for the long term of this war, and also the intensity of what is happening in your moments. So self-care isn't something just to have because it's fun or nice to have. It's because it will allow you to stay in this war at top, like peak performance in mental and physical strength. Because if you get sick, if you are unable to think clearly, you will not be able to serve yourself, your family, or your country as well. So but just understand, please do not underestimate. And I know that I cannot possibly imagine, even in the conflicts I've been in, what you are going through and witnessing what is happening on your soil. That will affect, some people will get angry, some people will get sad, some people will get both, but that is a lot to process. And it will cause stress, and it will take its toll on your systems, on your body. So that is why I'm such a proponent of of self-care.
Just something simple as breathing, just taking deep breaths in the moment is something small but has dividend that I can help you with.
Yeah, I remember, Floyd, you taught me this technique of breathing in like in a square for like count of 4.
Yeah, the box. 4 in, hold 4, out 4, hold 4, in 4.
Yeah.
We teach it to firefighters, we teach it to the military, we teach it to everybody about how do you in the moment get yourself, back focused. Just start going through that breathing technique to help calm yourself down, to then be, to show up how you want to show up, or just to get yourself through that particular moment.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
Victoria, sorry, Christine.
Go ahead. No, I wanted to see if we wanted to move to the last section.
Yeah, Victoria, what do we see in the chat? That's not addressed.
I think, yeah, there is one question left. I think it would be good to leave it to the end of our session.
Yeah, we have about 13 minutes left as per plan. And there's this one question that I remember we discussed with Valentina in the prep, and it came up, and I just wanted to be real and ask this question here is like, when nothing goes as per plan, what do you do? And how do you lead as long as you all self-cared and nurtured and have the team and have planned, like, what do you do when nothing goes as per plan?
You want to take that one, Floyd, to start? This is a good one.
Gosh, I've been in so many of those situations where you can have the best laid plan, and you could have the this last one around extreme preparedness. You have your contingencies, you rehearse, you practice. And as soon as you're in that operation, as soon as the first round is flying, the first thing goes, it's like, oh gosh, now what do we do? And honestly, what I've always found is in that moment, something came to me. First of all, you know, in those intense moments, my adrenaline was at such an incredible level. But there was a peacefulness that happened when my adrenaline started to get to that level. Things that I had trained years before came back to me. I had to go into a fighting position to get out some enemy soldiers. And I knew that the intelligence told us that these positions were booby traps. Without thought, the adrenaline came up in the moment to where I just naturally started checking for the booby traps because it all came back to me. So our training, what we've had in the past, the plans we prepared, they will come up in the moment when the adrenaline is pumping. So on one side, I'd say, trust yourself. It's going to come to you. What do I need to do next? The other piece, in which I already started to talk about, is how do we prepare for this stuff? We start working the contingencies. You know, so if you're, depending on your scenario, it could be, okay, hey, you know, the enemy force is within 5 Ks from our location. What are we going to do? We start building those contingencies as part of our communication plan. Everybody understands what their role is when these different pieces start to happen. The more we rehearse it, the more we practice that, the more when something happens, we're going to lean into what we just rehearsed and practice. That's been my experience. Christine, love to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, and I thank you for bringing that in. I think this is going to happen where you have no idea what to do, whether it's from the circumstance, whether it's just something that's unpredictable. And I think the most important thing is to take a breath. Like, you are where you are, and you are the person to make the call, to make the decision, to lead the way. And sometimes it's going to be, sometimes, Floyd, I think it does come to you. And sometimes it's also about, like, do you have a team or your battle buddy, or do you have time to ask, to say, like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And like, how do you lead? Do you need to talk out loud? Do you have some of those plans that you've talked about before that you can reference? But the bottom line is, it is going to happen. And all of us respond in different ways when we don't know. And whatever it is, what's needed is to take the first step, is to say, hey, we need 5 minutes to plan, or I need, you know, we need to make this call in right now. But it's being able to have that, that space to think and to respond in the way of what's needed. It's very unnerving. It's probably one of the most, because it triggers this feeling of that you're going to do the wrong thing. It triggers that somebody could get killed or hurt if you make an indecision. It's all of that fear that comes up when you don't know what to do, or you've tried all of this and you're experiencing failure. All of that, I get, is probably one of the most challenging times as leaders. And all I can say is, you can freeze. That's kind of an option, and somebody else is going to take over. Or you can say, okay, what's needed and what can I do? What's needed in the situation and what's in my span of control? And you just start to go. And that's when I know that sounds so simple, but it really is. That's the only thing you can do. So we offer that. I don't know if there's anything else, Elena, that we want to elaborate, but it is humbling to be in that moment. And I am with you. I think I've experienced things that I will tell you, sometimes I would almost laugh. Like, I had just had breakfast and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. And it is. It's not a TV show. It's not happening out there. You're not reading it as a case study. And it's what you do. Well, that is your leadership edge. That is your, I go before you know. That is the bringing in the resources and making the calls and who you're relying on and how you're, and then however you execute whatever is needed in the moment. Do you need to evacuate? Do you need to regroup? Do you need to move positions? You know, whatever it is that's requiring this sense of urgency. But that is on you. And I will say, there is actually no real right or wrong answer, except for to try and try again. The one thing I wanted to say, and I know we're coming close on time, is the one thing that the enemy cannot take away from you is your will to survive, your will to live another day. And that will take you very far. That can take you honestly to the very end. So I know that I know the will of Ukraine is shining bright. So I highly do not ever underestimate your will. It's one of the most beautiful things, and we are with you. So please, in those moments that you don't know, it's not about having the right or wrong answers. It's about doing something and staying strong. Floyd, do you have anything else, or Elena?
Well said. Yeah, I've gotten things wrong, and we learn from it and we drive on.
Yeah. The one thing I want to add here, so beautifully said, Christine. I mean, this is the key factor that the enemy never counted on. And this is the key factor that's holding us all in, is the will. We are on our land. We fight for what we know and love. And that's a huge factor. On my hand, I'll just only add, there were days when I was in boxing and I was training with a professional boxer, classical boxing. And the paradoxical advice that I got from my boxing training, and which I also want to share here, it helps a lot, is like, take a backward step whenever you can before diving in headstrong into the fight, before engaging in a close fight. If you can, I know it's not always possible, but this backward step, just for a second, just to look at the big picture, just to see where we are, what do we have. Like, take this backward step. It makes all the difference. And this will help you to ask for help, to get extra information, to take another breath in, and then remember, what am I fighting for here? And what is my intent and what is my mission? And then obviously everything that we spoke about is leading to this moment. And that's why we call the strategy 5 extreme preparedness. It all plays a role, like the communication, the intent, the morale, the rules of engagement, and having energy tank full and the attention all under my control. And that's, I think, what I wanted to add here. And I know we have 5 minutes and another question to address. Victoria, before we close, what haven't we talked at?
Yes, thank you, Elena. Here is the last question. Are all those agile, Kanban, Scrum methodologies applicable for such situation and environment?
So as I understand, Floyd, did you have anything on?
I'm still trying to formulate the question, so maybe I'll build off of you.
Yeah, yes and no. So I think that the agile, the Kanban, a lot of times it's in this iteration, this continuous improvement type of mindset. So I definitely think that depending on, it can be a structure and methodology that can help us through. But there's something that I'm also saying no to, and I'm not quite sure what that is, but I think it can be a structure, but I think it can't be in isolation, because sometimes we're not always in improvement mode. Sometimes we're in the, we got to do and we have to let it go mode. So I think it's like, it's the hat that you wear when you're in a state of operation. I think sometimes crisis mode is, it isn't about getting the perfect answer. It's about getting good enough. Good enough is today. And so that trying to go for the optimal or refining is actually can run counter to what's actually needed. So it's definitely a great methodology when things are maybe a little bit more known or we have a little bit more time, but sometimes it needs to be good enough and you let it go and you drive on.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, would agree with that. There are those times where, hey, the stuff's hitting the fan, we just have to take action and move. And then we may be able to get back into that agile cycle afterwards. Okay, hey, here's what we had to do in the moment. What did we learn from it? How can we adjust from this? And then what are we going to do next? Elena, what would you add?
Yeah, I mean, it's time for everything. And I am all for having no perfect answer. I'm for, like, let's act when we need to act, and let's absolutely analyze and take the lessons and do the after action and make sure we communicate the lessons we have and get better next time. So that's, I think, my position on that. Valentina, we will be finishing our conversation today.
Yes. Thank you so much for your insights. They are really very valuable and important, and a lot of things that I have noted, and especially me, I will use it and will share with my friends, with my colleagues, and it was a really very valuable conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, I would like to thank Christine and Floyd for, first of all, for like not taking even a minute to respond to my request to join us for this, being so generous with sharing their stories and helping us to package it into something well-structured so people can take with them. And I take this as a support from the world, and with us standing on our land, defending it and creating our shared story and the next chapter in the glorious history of Ukraine. And thank you for being with us here today. And thank you to Kyiv School of Economics for having the space for these conversations. Yeah, thank you.